Welcome back to PAX Data Break. The topic of today is what does data tell us about the potential shift in regional dominance at public auction? PAX Data Break is an informal 10 minutes conversation among our MarTech experts covering current art market trends. My name is Matteo Pace and I'm part of the research team at PIX. For today's exciting topic, I'm delighted to be joined by Christine Buron, founder and CEO of PIX and board member of PIAM, bringing more than 20 years experience in the art market. In 2014, Christine founded PIX in London with the goal to bring innovative financial and analytical tools to the final market. Then I would like to welcome Paolo Turati, who is professor and economist based in Turin, Italy, with many years of senior experience in the art and financial world. As of today, Paolo coordinates the art operations and events for Fidartis Family Office and is in charge of the Executive Wealth Management course at Turin University in Italy. But so let's jump to the question of the day. What does data tell us about the potential shift in regional dominance and public auction? Christine, please enlighten us with data.
Thank you very much, Matteo. So what does data tell us about the potential shift in the regional dominance in public auctions? Historically, and especially over the past 15 years, 4 cities have dominated the trade of art at public auction. These cities are New York, London, Hong Kong, and Paris. If we look at revenue generated in each of these cities, we can see that the United States with New York has really dominated the market. And as of the end of March 2021, total revenue generated over the previous 12 months in US dollar was 3.4 billion in New York. London used to be, as you can see on the graph, really in par with the US market when looked at in US dollar. But over the past few years, the revenue coming from London has decreased slowly. And as of the end of March 2021, revenue generated over the previous 12 months in US dollar from London was 1.6 billion. At the same time, revenue generated in China and mostly in Hong Kong used to be really marginal compared to New York and London, but slowly but surely over the years, this revenue has grown to actually even overtake London. And as of March 2021, over the previous 12 months, $1.8 billion was generated out of Hong Kong. Finally, Paris is the number 4 in this global dominance, and as of March 2021, $500 million had been generated by by auction from Paris over the previous 12 months. So really, we can see that there's been a shift in the dominance over the previous 15 years. Now, if we look at particular region, and Hong Kong in particular, you may remember that in March 2021, an artwork by Basquiat, Jean-Michel Basquiat, was sold in Hong Kong. And this could be a sign of the importance of Hong Kong gaining a recognition in the market, especially from sellers. If we look at sales of artwork by Jean-Michel Basquiat, we can see that London has traditionally been a location for selling artworks by the artist. New York is obviously the favorite location, and Hong Kong so far had really been marginal, where we only started to see artworks by Basquiat in 2020, and these were really marginal compared to other artworks. But this could change with the latest sale of the artwork Warrior in Hong Kong, which really is going to bring some red to this graph and may open the door of Hong Kong for Jean-Michel Basquiat. Another interesting sign that we saw in the previous months in March is the fact that Sotheby's seemed to have upgraded its Paris sale during the spring. Historically, in February, we have the London spring sales, which are huge sales. And for Sotheby's, historically, they've represented almost 300 million pounds. And this year, as the sale took place in March, at the same time as traditionally the Paris Impressionist and Modern sale, what was interesting to see is that while the London sales seemed to suffer a decrease versus the history, the Paris sales suddenly seemed to have been upgraded. And it was quite symbolic that Sotheby's programmed the Paris sale as a first part of the London evening sale. Everything happened in one evening. So Paris is still on a much smaller scale, But as London decreases, if Paris continue to increase, at some point they may meet somewhere. And we may start to see a shift between London and Paris. Finally, I think what's interesting to notice is that historically, the first quarter has always been very London and New York focused, as you can see on this graph. And sales in other locations were really marginal, especially Hong Kong and Paris. But this year, if you look at the year 2021, you can see that Paris and Hong Kong seem to have played a much bigger role than historically. Revenue-wise, we can't fully see completely the impact yet, but maybe with the arrival of online sales and the possibility to watch auction from anywhere through the hybrid format and the screen, maybe we will see in the future a challenge to the traditional dominance of New York and London, and this may open the door for new locations, especially Hong Kong and Paris.
Christine, thank you so much for your presentation. It was extremely insightful. And Paolo, which is your stance on it?
Yeah, thank you, Matteo. Nowadays, we can for sure say that the cordial agreement managed by many auction houses and by various important gallery owners, among others, David Zwirner, who opened last year his new gallery in Paris. In the first need to share the partnership in the European art market between London and Paris after Brexit, had already clearly developed in the previous 2 years. The dynamics are strong, in my opinion. It will not happen that Paris will take over from London, but a bipolarity will be created in Europe, probably more and more balanced in order to allow collectors and dealers to realize the most of the tax and trade advantages in their purchases, also in terms of logistics. There are no longer the times when it was convenient to get a work of art, both, for example, in New York, to make it arrive in London and then to send it in Milan or in Berlin instead of proceeding directly, and this will make a certain difference to the advantage of Paris. In 2020, Christine and Matteo, France already represented most of 10% of the entire Western area in terms of turnover in art, including USA. After 2019, already in strong growth. Probably, after a century, history is putting things right. Until October the 24th, 1929, Paris had been the capital of art, also thanks to many rich Americans who lived there. I am a music lover, and the orchestral suite of An American in Paris by Gershwin, composed in 1928, is the emblem of that. And who, these Americans, after the crack of Wall Street, returned to America with their capital. Then came the war, and even more, the artistic phenomenon was saved, including the physical departure of artists such as Mondrian, Rothko, de Kooning, Ernest Duchamp, on the other side of the ocean. From then on, Paris didn't rise again. Even if the main auction houses, many large gallery owners and important foundations such as the Bernard Arnault's one, has maintained important branches there. But, Christine and Matteo, one piece is still missing to make Paris completely with London, a great Fries-Livelle art fair.
Very interesting.
Paolo, thank you so much for sharing your expertise on the subject. Now, let me wrap up some of the key concepts highlighted by our two amazing guests. So, Christine gave us an overview on the evolution of powers and weights on the global art market over the last 15 years in London, Paris, New York, and Hong Kong. Then Paolo focused on the evolution and a bit of the history of the European art market, in particular with the rise, or maybe re-rise, of Paris. Dear viewers, Christine and Paolo, thank you so much for your attention and the time spent together today. For today, that's all, but join us soon on another PyX Data Break with another topic on the art market. I look forward to seeing you soon on PyX Data Breaks.